In this audio documentary, I will remember the wonderful Princess Diana. I hope to explore her life, her death, and her memory. We will analyse the way she was treated by the people in her life and the people watching her life. If this is the first time you are hearing about Lady Di, I hope you learn something, and I hope you notice the long history of mistreatment of women who marry into the royal family. A lot of people have very strong opinions on Diana, who she was as a person, the person she became at the end of all of it, the things that she did, the things that she stood for. And I was lucky enough to talk to some of those people. Before we meet them, though, allow me to first give you some information on Diana.
I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, in people's hearts. But I don't see myself being queen of this country.
We have reports from Paris that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident.
From our very own Foreign Secretary, Robin Cook, who's in the Far East at the moment, that Diana, Princess of Wales,
has died, according to British sources.
It's confirmation that Diana, Princess of Wales, has died. She died at 4 a.m. after going into cardiac arrest.
Diana was born on the 1st of July 1961 at Park House. This was the house her parents rented on the Queen's estate. Her father was an earl, making her a lady. Diana grew up with the royals, playing with Charles and the others. She ended up marrying Charles on the 29th of July 1981. The ceremony was televised internationally and watched by an audience in the hundreds of millions. She gave birth to her first child, Prince William, on the 21st of June 1981, and her second, Prince Harry, on the 15th September 1984. Diana became a symbol of elegance and glamour. She was truly an icon. She exuded charm and charisma, evolving into the woman Britain looked to for hope and understanding. She was a trendsetter and a wonderful activist, massively helping the LGBTQ+ community during the AIDS pandemic. The princess visited London Middlesex Hospital to see the HIV and AIDS patients. At the time, misinformation was everywhere regarding the illness, especially the idea that it was spread through any kind of physical touch. Diana met one of the people diagnosed with AIDS and shook his hand. The picture of this was shared around the world. She said, "HIV does not make people dangerous to know, so you can shake their hand and give them a hug. Heaven knows they need it." Diana broke rank to be there for a marginalised community who were terrified and dying. She seemed to have a habit of seeing the people underneath the stigma, and because of this, and Diana saying she often felt like an outsider herself, people who related clung to her for some form of hope and acceptance during such a horrific time. In 1992, Diana and Charles separated. Diana was being hounded by the press. Everything she did was recorded and spread around the world. Diana told her story in a book by Andrew Morton named Diana, Her True Story, that same year. She also very famously gave a tell-all interview in 1995. This interview created quite the controversy. They officially divorced in 1996, and Diana continued to support charitable causes, even introducing her sons into a world they would have otherwise never known, by taking them to homeless shelters and orphanages, through drive-thrus. In 1997, Diana and her partner Dodi Fayed were being driven through Paris by their driver, Henry Paul. They were trying to escape pursuing journalists when they were in an accident. This accident killed all three of them. The photographers chasing them were originally blamed for the accident until a French judge cleared them of any wrongdoing, instead seeing Henry Paul, the driver, as the true guilty party. Henry apparently had taken prescription drugs that were incompatible with alcohol and then had a drink. Scotland Yard carried out their own inquiry, coming to the same conclusion. In 2008, a British inquest jury ruled that both the driver and the paparazzi were at fault, and found them guilty of unlawful killing through grossly negligent driving. The public was heartbroken and enraged. Her funeral was televised, and the image of her sons, 15 and 12 at the time, walking behind their mother's coffin was famous around the world. Diana's death has long been seen as suspicious by the British public, who believe the case runs a lot deeper and a lot darker than anyone knows.
I was 20 when she died in 1997. So much of my kind of teenage years, we grew up watching Diana. She was constantly on the news. Obviously, we didn't have social media. You couldn't just look at it on your phone. So every time you watched the news on Granada or BBC, she was always on it for some reason. So I just remember her being like a reality star before reality stars existed, because she was that popular and absolutely everybody loved her. It was, for me, like a celebrity, not a royal. At the time, I didn't really have many opinions of her. I knew she was popular. I knew she did a lot of charity work. I obviously knew of the troubles in their kind of relationship, with Charles. But I think as a teenager, I didn't really have opinions because I was more interested in going out with my friends. But as an adult looking back, I've really taken a massive interest in her life because I just find her fascinating. And my opinion now is completely different to kind of what it was back when she was alive. I think, I'm 45 now and I can see what she was doing. I think she was a dichotomy. I think on one side, she was a very sincere, loving, charitable woman who did give a lot of her time. and a lot of her energy to people that she loved and cared about and charities. But I think on the other side, she was an absolute master manipulator as well. And I think as an adult, I can see that, whereas as a teenager, I couldn't see that. My background's in drama, so I can tell an actress a mile away, and I think she's an actress. When you actually watch her on screen, to you know the Panorama interview, the famous Panorama interview, the way she looks at the camera is just, it's not that's acted, it's scripted. She knew how to kind of cultivate her image and cultivate what the media saw. She courted the press. She was able to manipulate the media. She also used to tip off the media so that they knew where she was going to be at really key moments of her life. So when the press found out about the affair with Camilla Parker Bowles, she tipped the press off to tell them where she would be on that evening so that the press could capture her. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she got the media to portray her in the light that she wanted to be shown. She cultivated that. I think it's one of those things like, be careful what you wish for. I think she wanted it in the early days, but she grew that. I think she asked for it, but then at the end, towards the end of her life, when she was getting chased by paparazzi, etc., I think it all became a little bit too much for her. I think she knew what she was signing up to, but I think once she'd got what she wanted from the press, which was this Queen of Hearts label that she got, I think once she kind of moved away from her royal duties and became just a woman again, when she'd left Charles and just became a mum, and then obviously Dodi Fayed's lover and things like that, I don't think she wanted that anymore, because she very much wanted to live her life. And obviously she was older then as well. She was like mid-30s, wasn't she? So she would have changed as well as a woman. And I think once she got to that point, she didn't want that anymore, but it was too late. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of normal people, to use that word, who do that day in and day out. We run a charity, but we don't label ourselves the Queen of Hearts, and and we don't put ourselves into the press. And there's hundreds of people like that. She was very good with civilians. She was really good at kind of, that public image. She was good with children. Obviously, she visited, was it AIDS victims in New York and things like that. She did a lot of things like that the royal family would have stayed away from in those days. Does anybody deserve a title like that? I don't think so, because I think if you are doing something completely altruistically, so, because you want to do it and not for any self-gain, then you wouldn't expect a title like that. I think her relationship with the media was totally transactional. When it was her funeral, like I say, I was 20 when she passed away. And the day of her funeral, it was one of my friend's 18th birthdays. There was this real sense that I've never felt before of mourning. Everywhere was closed. Everyone was watching the funeral on the television. It was huge. Like, I remember my dad, he was crying his eyes out on the day of the funeral. And I was like, Dad, you don't even know her. And it was, I think everybody loved her. I've never really heard many people say anything opposite. So I used to think, am I just being horrible? But, respect to her, she was the first royal person to kind of come out and to actually step out and, greet children and greet sick people and greet disabled people. The royal family were kind of quite standoffish at that point. I mean, obviously, like Harry and William now and Kate and things, they're very much like her in so far as that they will like mingle in crowds and things like that. She was the first one to do that. So I think people really did feel like they knew her. I think she had a lot of compassion. I really do. I don't think she was a horrible woman at all. And I think she's passed that compassion down to her children. She will always be the people's princess and the Queen of Hearts. For those people who need that, then that's good for them. But it's not something I would ever refer to her as.
If you weren't you, would you like to? What would you
I'd like to be a dancer.
I just remember watching this woman grow into just this amazing icon who was so well dressed, and she'd kind of turned her life around from the struggles that she had in the royal family to being this woman of her own identity. And the family had almost let her down over and over. They didn't make it easy for her entering into the royal family. And I remember that it was all about Charles's image And Diane fitted that image because she was beautiful. She was just innocent, stunning, and they could mould her into the future queen. But there was no love from Charles. It was always very clear that he was always affectionate for Camilla. So you knew that it was almost like an arranged marriage, and that was the hardest thing. So yeah, there was, I think, a lot of relief for the nation that she managed to come back from that, because, you know, they wanted to just disregard her like she was nothing. And you'd kind of think, what does she see in him? But I genuinely believe she loved him. And yeah, we were sad that they got divorced, but I think it was a long time coming because she struggled so much, and you could see her yo-yoing, you know, because obviously the press were around her constantly. I think that the press were intrusive. It's a difficult one because the royal family belong to us as a nation, but they have a right to privacy, and then that can be argued, well, actually, if you're famous, you're letting everyone look at you and your celebrity status. Do you honestly think you can give up the right to privacy? People should have the right to their own privacy. I wouldn't want anyone intruding on such personal situations. It was a negative intrusion for a period of years, but then she managed to work them in her favour when she was trying to raise her profile. So it did her good in the end to have that relationship with the press. When she was ill, and I think it was very obvious she was ill and she was really, really struggling, you know, I think she couldn't fight back. But I think as she started fighting back, she started to realise, actually, yeah, I need to turn it back on everybody who's been against me or had it in for me. And I don't think the press have ever had it in for Diana. I think they were addicted to her as much as the rest of the population. We were obsessed with Diana for everything that she stood for, because she was just Diana. She was value for money. I think in the end, she realised that working with the press was better than not working with the press. We've got to remember that, you know, Diana was one of the first of the royal families to ever reach out to charity and meet patients that had AIDS. AIDS in the 80s was, you know, don't touch people, don't drink from the same straws. There was such negativity and such ignorance around AIDS. And people thought that they could just catch it by being in the same room or touching them and stuff like that, where we know now how AIDS is transmitted. And I think that, again, her relationship with that also educated us as people about AIDS, you know, because we'd follow Diana wherever she'd go. Whatever Diana did, it was amazing. She just had this golden touch. And she stepped up. She wasn't going to be like the royals. Just, for me, she was just going to become part of the royal family. She was going to be Prince Charles's wife, and in a period of the 80s where the wife still stayed at home and the husband still worked, I think it was going to be very much, yes, she would have duties to perform, but you were to be the one that would just stood by your man. I often wonder if she'd never started to do things for herself because she knew the royal family weren't going to help her, I think that royal family wouldn't be around today. They were in danger at that point with regards to where they were in that time and climate, and I think Diana saved their skin because she's so genuine of heart. That was one of the things I always believed about her. I think she would have always tried to do. You wouldn't think it was happening in the royal family. They're this monarchy where they portray this image, and all of a sudden we were being made to see, actually, do you know what, it is quite dark. You know, they're not necessarily a family to lead by example. They're still not forward thinking, and they're not quick to react. They're a bit slow to burn. And I'm not saying they don't get to the right decision in the end, but too much then goes on. We all wore our hearts on our sleeves with Harry, because to be brought up to be told that Prince Charles isn't your dad, them having to deal with losing their mum at such a young age, and I get it, you know, sometimes there's always someone who doesn't feel like they ever fit in their family. You know, you can have all the proof in the world, all the blood proof in the world, it's just never enough to make you feel like you belong. And I'm glad that Meghan's fulfilled that for him. In many ways, she has the spirit of Diana. But Harry had issues with the family, and I feel like she's taken part of our institution away from us. And Harry, those boys, Prince William and Prince Harry, they became the nation's boys, because all of a sudden we wanted to swoop them up when Diana died, and we just wanted them to be okay. I think there was an agenda. I think there was a bounty on her head. I think that they needed rid of her. She was a problem. For centuries comes sadly historical racism, discrimination and stuff like that. It's evident in every aspect of life when you look back at our history. And I think how could she be dating a Muslim? I think for them it was just not acceptable, and I think they just couldn't run the risk, because for the first time it was so lovely to see her so happy. When you would see the 20-year-old Diana, who would go bright red in her cheeks, keep her head down, she was all very shy and very introvert, to then watching her grow, to then seeing her fall apart when she split up with Prince Charles, to then become this woman who, she worked so hard on herself, I do believe she really did, and to finally find someone that she absolutely loved. And you could see it in just her every fibre, just how relaxed she was, how she wasn't afraid of the camera anymore, how she wasn't afraid to be seen. And I think Dodi Fayed just loved her and she loved him. That's all he ever wanted. So I think that was a problem for the royal family. I think that there's a lot more restrictions for the media now. I think they have really reined it in, and I think that by the end of the day, there just needs to be boundaries. Meghan wants it her way because she wants to be a woman within her right, within her power, and not be told what to do. And I agree with that. She wants to be part of the royal family. It doesn't work like that. And if you understand that, then that's half your battle. And I just think she didn't want to. I think she was just defiant all the way. And I think if they stayed together, if they stayed within the royal family, I actually think that they would have done them more favours than the other way around. I do. I think that they would have just brought the royal family into a whole new stratosphere. I don't think people like Prince Charles. I don't think they're looking forward to him being our future king. And I think that the next 10 to 15 years are going to be telling. I fear for that, because institutionally we are the royal family, but do we really need them in this day and age? Part of me wants to say yes, because on the back of tourism, what they bring in, and our reputation around the world, but is our reputation any better than what it was as a monarchy in an institution? 100 years ago we were leading in so many ways, but I think that we've become an institution now where sometimes I'm not proud to be British. I'd like the royal family to stay around, but I don't think they're quick enough to change. They'll all start falling down the moment Charles comes into power. There was a point of when she died where they weren't going to give the state funeral that the country wanted, and the backlash, the anger from the nation, because Diana was what made the family popular again, because she wasn't inbred, she wasn't, I'm marrying my German cousin down the road. She was just a girl of wealth. She came from a wealthy family. She came from societal hierarchy. But yeah, why not? And so, yeah, we fell in love with them again, and they served a purpose. And her death caused public outcry that they were going to do a state funeral. It was only then when you could see all the flowers. I remember writing in the book of condolence at my local church, where they had a book of condolence out. You kind of just realised that, she's what made that family popular again. And that was very explicit. Well, she's made you lot again. You don't do this. There's going to be no royal family. But sadly, they've saved themselves on the brink of someone's death. I think they were very insular looking before Diana died. It was all about them, and they were trying to protect their image. What they didn't realise is actually Diana was raising the royal family image. They just saw her as a detriment. Prince William marrying Kate was kind of save the royal family again. I think Harry and Meghan almost got there. We have William and Kate as our future, but Harry and Meghan are our future, and without all of them, I think the monarchy's gone.
Clearly, Diana still holds a special place in everyone's heart. Here I would like to take a moment to draw some parallels between Diana and Meghan Markle. In some of my interviews I did mention this, and the responses were varied. Meghan seems to be almost It's as if the palace is trying to reproduce that kind of public affection that they had when Diana was around. And I don't know whether this is coincidence or whether it is strategic, but Meghan seemed to be dressed in very similar clothes. You know, she kind of is another version of Diana in some ways. She went through very similar things. The royal family wasn't very welcoming to her either, apparently. And some of the things that they say in their interviews are scarily similar. Diana spoke about being ashamed of her feelings because no one knew how to deal with them. She felt as if she was alone in those feelings because she actually said, you know, if you've never seen it, how do you help? And Meghan has said very similar things herself. She talked about how she felt alone and isolated and ashamed. Meghan also left, which was something Diana never got to do. She took her husband and she fled, and that possibly saved her life. Meghan also did her own interview. So if you wish to do any more research on this, please do. I think you'll find it quite interesting.
And I hope we can now look forward to the future and not hang on to the past.
I see. It means you have confidence in the future?
I do. Thank you very much. I do.